Hello everyone. Thank you for joining us today. We're really thrilled to have you all. We can see that there's quite a lot of people today, so it's really great to see that. I also want to thank the P21 Gallery and Gil for organizing this event today. We are going to get a little distracted as we go. We might be admitting people as we speak, so please forgive us. I would like to present everyone who is on the panel today, starting with Gil. So Gil Mualem-Doron, who is the artist behind the exhibition Cry the Beloved Country and the photography series Present Absentees. You probably have heard of him. He is socially and politically engaged, and he works to spread his message through his art, using primarily photography, digital art, installations, and he often uses participatory practices, whether that be in his live performances or even in his visual work. He's been exhibited extensively in the UK and abroad, in many places like Tate Modern, the Turner Contemporary, People Histories Museum. He's been all the way to Amsterdam and Detroit, amongst many other places. Regarding Present Absentees, which is the photography series, which we will be discussing today in today's event, it was conceived at the Al-Fahm Gallery, and it won the Long Exposure Award in the local testimonies section, which is a part of the World Press Photography Organization. So if you'd like to see more of his work, we've just provided a link to the Cry the Beloved Country website and his website in general with more of his work and other exhibitions. You can find it in the chat box if you need to, and we can also provide it later on a screen, so it'll be easier to access for everyone. I'm honored to say that today we have Salman Abu Sitta, who is joining us. He is the founder and president of the Palestine Land Society, and he is the author of multiple books on Palestine and over 300 articles on subjects such as the right of return or the history of the Nakba, amongst other subjects. Throughout his career, he has led extensive work on the documentation and the mapping of Palestine and its people. You probably know him from his famous acclaimed memoir, Mapping My Return, which describes his life in Palestine and his struggle to return to his home. He was born in the village of Al-Ma'in, which you will see featured later on in our third guest, Eitan Bronstein Aparicio. I hope I'm pronouncing everyone's names right. I'm very sorry if I butcher it, please correct me. Eitan is an Israeli educator. He served for over 10 years as the coordinator of encounters and projects between Jews and Arabs at the School for Peace at Wahat al-Salam. He is the founder of the famous NGO Zochrot, and in 2015, he co-founded a new organization called De-Colonizer, which I believe you can find at decolonizer.org. And Eitan, please feel free to share the link on the chat as well. He is the author of numerous articles. He's also, as you will see later, a video director and editor, and we will be very lucky to see the screening of his film today, To Gaza and Back Home. Finally, a bit about me. So my name is Ghazaleh Zogheib. You can call me Zalia for short, which you might hear my peers call me today. I am an educator, a curator, and a researcher, and I focus my research on the link between art and learning. It is also the foundation for my work as a language teacher. I teach English and French on the side. I believe that languages is very much linked with the cultural sector. I organize workshops for children and adults, and I develop projects on educational and artistic practices. I've also worked briefly in peace building, and I use that experience in my cultural work. Um, I believe that I should maybe give everyone a little introduction as to why, as a Palestinian curator, I am participating and engaging in this project. I think it's important to talk about these things nowadays, and this is why we're having this event. I believe that Gil's work is not only visually unique, but it needs to be seen, and it's particularly important in the Palestine and Israel context, but not only. I mean, as we can see today, we have many human rights issues that are coming up in the United States and across the West. So I think that one thing that has been happening is that we are realizing that the white privileged majority is now engaging, hopefully a bit more, and we are now understanding that it is important for every one of us to do our work and educate ourselves and engage directly with these systems that are not working for all of us. I believe that by engaging in this work, particularly on the Palestine-Israel issue, I am partaking in Gil's initiative to create a space for dialogue. This is what he does throughout most of his work. He exposes the colonial and fascist dynamics that are behind the human rights violations taking place as we speak in Palestine and Israel. Eitan is himself, as an Israeli, decolonizing his own space. He is spreading awareness of Palestinian history and of our right of return to his own people. And Salman, of course, is here representing the Palestinian, well, or not. I mean, we don't all represent an entire community, but as an expert on the Palestinian refugee issue, and of course, doing a giant work of archival and mapping and research. So yeah, I'm very, very happy to be here and to be able to start this conversation. We will be going on today with a presentation, first of all, of Gil's photography project, so Present Absentees. We would then go on to the presentation and the screening of Eitan's film, To Gaza and Back Home. Finally, we will have a commentary on the film by Salman and myself. And we will go on to a brief conversation between the four of us, and finally Q&A with everyone. So if you have questions, I think the easiest thing is to maybe write them in the chat box, and hopefully we can address as many as possible later on. Gil, would you like to take on from here and present your work?
Yeah, thank you, Rosalia. Hi, everybody. Thank you very much for coming. I haven't done a lot of these Zoom events, so it's kind of multitasking, which we men are not very good at. I'm going to show just one project out of many at the exhibition. You can see the other work on the website. I chose this particular project because I think it's well, all of them are relevant, but this is one of the, from personal view, more engaging. I'll show some of the images and then I'll talk about it a bit and generally about the exhibition. Or maybe I'll say a few words about the exhibition. The exhibition called Cry the Beloved Country, which is after a book, a very well-known book that was written in 1948, if I remember correctly, on the situation of the Blacks in South Africa. This book was quoted in an article by Dr. Carlebach, who was the chief editor of the most common newspaper in Israel. The article was published in 1953, where in that article, Dr. Carlebach compared the situation of the Black people in South Africa to the Palestinian in Israel. Of course, we are talking before 67. And even goes as a Holocaust survivor to compare some of the events in Israel at the time, some of the laws to Nazi laws in the mid-30s, which is, it was quite eye-opening to read something like that from this point in time. The exhibition include works from the past 10 years. Most of them are newer, and touch upon various subjects, uses various practices. And as I said, I'll just show now one of the project, which is present absentees, and discuss it later. Give me a second, I'm just opening it. Okay, this is some of the images in the of this project. what you see in these images is the collaboration with the Al-Fahim Gallery, which is a Palestinian gallery in what is now Israel. Many of the residents of Al-Fahim came from a village that was destroyed in 1948, El Ajun. The gallery in the archive documented the village and its surrounding. And the idea was to project these images on empty boards. And the empty boards that you see the residents, the participants holding, kind of relate to the Zionist imagery, colonial imagery of Palestine as an empty space. These boards are being projected with images of what was there. All of the participants were either born, some were children in that village, or it's the daughters, sons, and grandchildren participated in that. I don't think I'll say much more. I prefer to leave time for questions, and we have also Eitan film and Salman discussion. All of this going to be shown anyhow at P21 on site in September, but I would be happy to have question about the project without saying much more about it now. Rosalia, would you, are we going to open the question now, or shall we continue and question in the end?
I think given the time, it's probably best that we go on to the film, because the film, I believe, is 22 minutes or 20 minutes. So let's just go on to the presentation of the film, and we'll do questions after the commentary.
Okay.
So Eitan, if you want to
Yes.
talk to us a bit about the film.
I will present very shortly before the film. First, I want to say that I'm really very, very glad for this invitation by Gil and by the gallery to present today. In fact, for the first time in public, this video. It was published only at the exhibitions in the gallery in Al-Ma'in, in fact, in the village of Al-Ma'in, which now is part of Israel, south near Gaza Strip. Also it's presented in Catalonia. Now this project, in fact, started in 2016 with this excellent book by Salman Abu Sitta that you see reverse, but it's the book that Ghazaleh, you mentioned at the beginning. And Salman, after writing this book, addressed me and suggested me to deliver the message, his message from his memoir in this book to the people that are living on the land, on his land, in Al-Ma'in. And so for me, you can imagine how happy I am to be here tonight with Salman again and closing this experience and showing him my main work on this exhibit. Well, I found Salman's idea very interesting. I have a lot of experience in working with Israelis on the Nakba. And I started to research the place there, and I discovered, I didn't know it before, of course, I discovered that the only house remained from Al-Ma'in is this house that you see now in the screen. It's this is the only house remained standing of Al-Ma'in, and it turned to be an art gallery named the White House, and it's run by one kibbutz there, Kibbutz Nir Oz, one of the 4 kibbutzim that are on the land of Al-Ma'in. So I started to do a research with the help, of course, of Salman. I read his book, and I started to research that issue. And then I came to the gallery director, a kibbutz member from Nir Oz, and suggested him to put in to present in the gallery, the story of Al-Ma'in. He was enthusiastic about it, and I worked on this project 3 years with several items that I'm not going to discuss much because you are going to see the main work, the main result of my work is this video that you are going to see now. And in fact, I just have to say, and maybe I can elaborate on that later, that it was received with a lot of emotions, let's say. On one hand, people were happy to see the story that they never heard before. They never knew anything about who lived there before, why they left. It was the first time that they knew something about Al-Ma'in. I'm talking about those Israelis there. And it raised a lot of emotions, also of anger from some of the Israelis there that were didn't believe much the story. This, they said some things cannot be. They imagine all kind of things. On the other hand, there were also very moved reactions of people that thanked a lot for the project and loved it very much. And it was presented there for 2 weeks, and many people who lived there mainly came to see it, and it raised a lot of attention in the media. So it was very, very interesting. And now I'll be glad to show you this 22 minutes video that in fact bring the story of Al-Ma'in, but through me, through my work and what I do, or what I brought to this place. So I'll share it now, and hope you will get it in a good quality also. Share screen.
יש לה אמא, אבא, כלב, ואהבה יכול היה להיות מושלם. ילדה קטנה היא לא חשדה שהמקום שבו נולדה עד לא מכבר היה כפר, מה נותר תלולית עפר. זמן עבר, הכאב נשאר. על קו החוף ילדה קטנה, מחול רטוב דירה בונה. לפני 60 שנה, כשההורים שלה נסעו, היא האמינה כשאמרו שהם לכאן עוד יחזרו. ילדה קטנה היא לא חשדה, עזרה לשים במזוודה. כשהתרחקו אורות הכפר, היא נרדמה כמעט ישר. הזמן עבר, הכאב נשאר. לעזה!
اثنين يعني مروحين من المدرسه، واحد عارف الارض تبعت من جماعتنا، فكشف عن تاج، فهم ماشيين المحراث طلع التاج هذا، تاج الذهب. ذهب خالص، الحكمه البيزنطيه. اخذوا التاج هذا، اخذوه وراحوا على فم البئر وكسروه. كسروه بحجر. ليش؟ كسروه بيلعبوا اولاد صغار، كان في الصف الاول ولا الثاني، ما يعرفوش حاجه. واحد منهم جمعوا حطوا في الشنطه تبعه، اما راح باعته في سوق خان يونس. باعته نفل في سوق كخرده يعني. والله خساره يعني هذا الانسان الياسر. يعني الارض المعين، انت اليوم ذكرت في كلمه حلوه، مش معين ابو سته، معين. لان في اللغه المعين سلسال الماء مع الماء ومجاري الماء، كانت فيها مياه. اي نعم، فمعين اقرب الى الصواب والى الصح. المعين يعني قديش عدد السكان وكام؟ 2000 تقريبا. 2000 وكلهم ابو سته؟ كلهم ابو سته. ابو سته. الناس ايش كانت تشتغل؟ زراعه، عندنا زراعه وعندنا ارض خصبه جدا، تزرع مرتين في السنه بدون امطار، بدون ري، على ميه المطر. بعلي على ميه المطر تكفي. يعني بيزرعوا الذره بيقطعوها خلص، بيزرعوا بطيخ وبينجحوا 100%. ولا رش ولا امراض كان البطيخ. ثله صغيره من القوات الاسرائيليه، القوات المهاجمه، بدأوا في الانسحاب والهروب إلى رفح سيناء. عادوا على أعقابهم بسرعة وتركونا. أين معلومة يعني منزل معلوم المعالم يعني، لكن لم يسكن بعد. وعندما اكتمل بدأت الهجرة عام 48. أي نعم. بدأ الهجوم ولا ما شابه ذلك، والقوات المصرية سكنت عنا.
אנחנו נכנסים בכיוון קיבוץ נירים שנמצא על האדמות של אל-מעין. 4 קיבוצים נמצאים על האדמות של אל-מעין, נירים, ניר עוז, מגן.
هذا أرض للحج حسين أبو الدكتور، فيها لوز وفيها يعني أشجار ومزروع. أبو الدكتور سلمان أبناء عمومة، أبناء عم، يعني آبائهم إخوة. Our dear friend Abu Ala told me that the house where Dr Salman Abu Sitta was born is here.
זה פה. פה היה הבית של חסן דעשן סאקר אבו סיטה.
كان عندكم مدرسة؟ كان عندنا مدرسة أقامها والدنا دكتور سلمان.
פה זה שרידים של הבית של
אחמד חמאד דהשן אבו סיטה.
נראה פה בתצלום אוויר של אל-מעין מ-1945. אנחנו עומדים כאן קרוב לכניסה לקיבוץ נירים, קרוב אלינו גם נמצא בית הקברות של נירים, שזה איפה שהיה בית הספר של אל-מעין.
مدرسة، وين كانت بعيدة عن داركم؟ بعيدة عن البير 2 كيلو. 2 كيلو وين؟ للشمال. كيف كنتوا تمشون هالمدرسة؟ مسيرة على الأطباء. مدرسة على مرتفع. على مرتفع. ايش شكل بناء المدرسة؟ كم غرفة؟ يمكن صفين. صفين المدرسة. والصف فيه عدة درجات يعني. هذا الصف هذا 4 صفوف. هذا صف أول ولا ثاني.
פה זאת בדיוק נקודת הציון של בית הספר.
ايش المواد اللي كنت كل المواد، كل شيء.
يتعلموا عربي وحساب
عربي وحساب ورياضيات وشابه ذلك وجغرافيا وتاريخ. هو الأستاذ كان يعرف كل شيء، يعني
كان شامل.
قاموس.
من أي صف كانت المدرسة تقريبا تتعلم؟
الصف الرابع.
كم طالب كانوا كتار التلاميذ اللي كانوا بدرسوا؟ يعني بوصلوا لهم 100 تلميذ؟
والله أنا أذكر هذا العدد تقريبا.
של אבו סיטה שהיה פה? כן. אתה זוכר את המבנה עומד?
לא.
אתה זוכר את ההריסות? זה הריסות שבית שהיו כאן? או בית שדחפו אותם?
לא, זה בית שהיה כאן.
היה כאן הבית.
בהחלט.
אוקיי.
הוא הולך מסביב, אפשר לראות את ה... תראה, הקרקע שלי פעם היו פחות מזה, כן?
ברור.
אבל ראו את המבנה יותר.
תצלום אוויר, 1945, רואים את המבנה הזה פה ליד בית הספר.
שיום אחד נראה פה איזה מונית או טקסי, כן? הוא ראה שני צעירים אינטליגנטים, הבין שזה ערבים. הוא נתן להם ניחוש, הוא אומר, תגיד, אתם קשורים לאבו סיטה? אמרו, כן, אנחנו מהבנים, מישהו מהבנים.
אוקיי.
הם רצו לראות, ראו.
את הפליטים מפה היו אומרים, כן, אנחנו רוצים לחזור ולחיות איתכם ביחד, לא במקומכם, ביחד.
אני משוכנע שלא נסכים לכך. אני יכול להבין את זה. אנחנו לא נרצה להביא מצב שהאוכלוסייה פה תהיה בחלקה הגדולה עם ערבים.
נוסעים לכיוון מה שעכשיו הגלריה, ויש פה בית כנסת עתיק של מעון. מה זה השרידים האלה? רגע. פה אמור להיות באזור הזה מכולת של משפחת השואל. אז בואו נראה אם פה זה המכולת הזאת של השואל. אז מה הנקודת ציון שיש לך?
31, 1941.
31, 1941.
34, 24, 12.
34, 24, 12. זה בדיוק פה, בול. וואו. מצוין, אז זה אז מצאנו.
هذا واحد من خان يونس ساكن هنا. كان عنده دكان.
واحد من خليج كان عنده دكان؟
كان عنده دكان ساكن هنا.
يعني هذا اللي هنا ممكن تكون
جايز.
אז צריך לשים פה שלט בשביל לפתוח שוב את המכולת. גם חם היום, אפשר יהיה לשתות משהו.
هذا مركز المكان، مركز القرية كان. لأنه هنلاحظ كل الطرق تلتقي هنا.
صحيح.
بذكرك بشيء.
קוראים לי איילת רם, אני מקיבוץ נירים. נולדתי בקיבוץ נירים. אימא שלי שולה רם ואבי זאב רם, הם ממייסדי הקיבוץ. הם עברו מדנגור דרך חירבת מעין לקיבוץ נירים שמאחוריי. אל מעין או חירבת מעין, פה עובר בדיוק קו הבצורת. הם התיישבו פה לתקופה לא ארוכה, אז הם עברו עוד כמה מאות מטר קדימה לקיבוץ נירים, ושם הם בנו בעצם את בית הקבע שלהם.
ועל הכפר עצמו, את זוכרת? סיפרו משהו?
אני הבנתי שהם ברחו, שהמקום הזה היה בעצם כפר שומם, והם התיישבו בעצם אחרי שהם ברחו.
היום את יודעת? לא בתור יודעת.
נמתרת לי שגירשו אותם כאילו כמו את מרבית ערביי ישראל. כיום זה ברור לי בעצם, שלא שמו להם שטיח אדום והם הלכו לעזה.
אחרי 2 ימים כן, את זוכרת?
כן, כן, עברנו בתור ילדים, היינו נוסעים עם טרקטור לים. כשאני מסתכלת על הצד הזה, אני מסתכלת עליו בגעגוע, באהבה, אני מכירה את הדקלים שם, וזה חלק ממני.
ואת יודעת איפה הם נמצאים היום? פליטי...
ממש לא.
שנמצאים בח'אן יונס.
אוקיי.
כמה אלפי פליטים מפה, שזה 8 קילומטר מפה.
כן. יאללה, בוא.
ממש שכנים.
אני אשמח לפגוש אותם, כי אני באמת מרגישה שיש לי געגוע לצד השני, לא בתור כובש.
ומה אם הם היו רוצים
לחזור, לממש את זכות השיבה שלהם.
תראה, אני לא אפנה להם את הבית שלי, אבל יש פה מספיק אדמות שברצון, כאילו באהבה. זאת אומרת, אם הם רוצים לחיות איתי, אני רוצה לחיות איתם.
يعني قلنا هذا البير، هذا اللي جنبه ايش ممكن يكون هذا الساحه؟ هذا البير ولا البير؟ هذا البير.
وهذه أرض للحج حسين ولا جدي.
ووتر ويل اند حج حسين ايش؟
والد دكتور سلمان. وين الساحة؟
هذه الساحه.
هذه الساحة قدام البير.
في حولها دارك دور كم؟
لا هذه على الطريق، الساحة تتصل بالطريق. تتصل بالطريق.
يعني مش لحدا ساحه وخلص، الناس اللي بتصف المي.
الساحة تابعة اللي جاي بده ينزل عشان يطحن الحب.
يعني كان في بابور هذا. صح يعني كان في هنا بابور.
في بابور.
البابور في مبنى البير نفسه ولا جنبه ولا جنبه؟
لا
مطحنة. مكنة.
وبعدين قضبان حديدية تحت نازلة يشتغل يطلع وهيك. ايوه متصلات ببعض عشان يوصلوا 80 متر تحت الارض.
طب
انا بدي اقول معلومة اللي انا متأكد منها.
نعم.
انا حسب تقديري برضه الذاكرة الطفولية. يبعد حوالي 9 أو 12 متر المي، وكان فم البئر حجارة 4 حجارة متقاطعة عبارة عن مربع من الجرانيت. واو. وكنا ننظر إلى الماء من تلك الزاوية. ونسفوا البئر، بئر جدي، فنسفت. أنا كان عمري 4 سنوات 5 سنوات وبعض الشيء. ارتفع الدخان، كنا نبعد عن هذا البئر مسافة 2 كيلومتر. عندما نسف خرج الدخان إلى السماء. أذكر جيدا هذه الصورة عندما فجروا البئر اللي يشربوا منه.
نعم.
مكان شربهم.
كيف وصلتوا يا غزة؟
والله أنا سيرا على الأقدام، ومن ثم تجمعنا في خان يونس وفي رفح سيناء، وبعدين رجعنا ثاني، وبعدين رحنا دير البلح.
زي معرض في البيت. هذا بني في الأساس ليش؟
للسفر.
لمين؟ للجد كان؟
للجد.
وجدك إيش اسمه؟
أحمد. وكان موجود وبصحة جيدة يعني، سنه كان حوالي 45 سنة
يعني كان شاب
أو 50 سنة. نعم.
وعاش لأي سنة؟
إلى عام 63 في دير البلح.
المحتلين المكان أو اللي ماخذين البيت يعني إيش بتقول؟
والله إذا بيؤمنوا أني أملك هذا البيت وأن لي الحق في هذا البيت، أنا وأبنائي وأخوتي، لا أنكر حقهم في الوجود أيضا. يعني ما أنا لا أريد أن أعود إلى هذا البيت وإلى هذا المكان. ذكرياتي وأنا طفل مطبوعة طبعا، وأنه قادم من وراء البحر.
طب الحل يعني الحل في النهاية أساس
الحل الدولة الواحدة.
حل الدولة
أنا اليهود بحترم، هم في نوع من الحضارة، يعني لا ننكر أنه في تحضر. أنا عمري ما كنت معادي لليهودية والله أبدا، ولا للمسيحية. في منطقة الشام كلها ما فيش عداء للديانة أبدا. أنا إيدي نفس أوريك المعين.
والله مسمع.
الآن بوريك يا.
من وين؟
من هنا.
ممكن نشوفها؟
والله.
خلاص بنشوف إذا.
يلا.
خلاص نروح نشوف المعين.
سماحة المعين. Nosotros aquí vivimos en Palestinian. Dr Mualem-Doron.
So we start the journey from Gaza to Jerusalem with love.
Thanks for coming.
Can you repeat me the name of the dish? It's like the dish of the fisherman.
Yeah. Downtown, the street is very narrow. Very short visit.
Yes, very short.
Next time we can come for extended period, then we can
to go to the land to pick the clementines.
Yes, this will be the last time to see you before the Christmas.
Before Christmas, yes.
So happy New Year. Merry Christmas.
Thank you. How do you say Merry Christmas in Arabic? I forgot.
Milad Nasheed. You remember the last that killed the Italian journalist? Place here. This is what used to be the district of Yunis and it.
Yeah. You are really very close to the border.
Yes. I'm
استنى شوي لو This is the permit. Okay, شكرا.
Nice to meet you. See you inshallah soon again.
تمام الحمد لله.
أجنبية؟
أجنبية قديش؟ 10 ما في 10 بس 50.
50؟
شكرا مع السلامة. Tickets?
Yes.
This? Okay, fine. ما في سيارات؟ لا تكيلة برا أنا صحفية من إسبانيا بس في الكوس ما في البحر
كيفيش البحر؟
أنا بحب البحر أنا لحالي.
أنا في معي 2 وأنت 150 شيكل لحالك.
150
150 يلا. وين بدك تجيب القدس؟
مسكوبية. مسكوبية. تتسمعين. بلاد الكريم.
الأقصى. القدس.
In the gallery, they identify the places, and I can go now on the ground and find these places.
Thank you, Eitan, for this.
Thank
This was really, really beautiful. Would you like to say something before we start the commentary with Salman?
Maybe just to say that quick. I didn't mention in the beginning that I worked on this, as you saw, with the people from in Gaza. Within Gaza, Musa Bashir is a journalist, and with Isabel Perez, his partner, they located, they met Abu Ala with the help of Salman Abu Sitta, that is here, and he told them the stories that we heard in the video, and they worked on this mapping, the aerial photo that I sent them, the aerial photo from 1945 of Al Ma'in land. And yes, so the video shows all the journey of this aerial photo from Tel Aviv to Gaza Strip and back home to El Ma'in. And then at the end, of course, it was one of the main item in the exhibition in Al Ma'in, the aerial photo framed with all the marks of Abu Ala with the help of Musa Bashir. Now I'll be happy to hear Salman, please. Just as I see that he's mute, so yeah.
Thank you. Salman, if you can unmute yourself.
What should I do? It's
yes, we hear you. We hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Yes. Yes.
Ah. All right. Can I make a comment or comments?
Yes, please. We're all ears.
I would like to make comments on two scenes separated by 60 years or more than 60 years. The first one in 2017, when Eitan made his exhibition. And the other scene I'm going to describe, 1948, when I was 10. So the first scene is when I published my book, Mapping My Return in 2016. It has been well received by many people. And I thought this is a good opportunity for the settlers on my land, which is Al Ma'in, which is about 6 by 8 kilometers. Now there are 4 kibbutzim on it: Nurim, Ain Hashlusha, Nir Oz, and Magan. So I thought it may be a good idea to let the people who settled on my land to know who were the people on this land, their history, how long have they been there, 200-300 years back, what they did, and so on, through the story of my life. So in that time, 2016, and even 10 years before, I was in touch with so many Jewish organizations claiming that they are proposing peace in the Middle East and showing some sympathy for the Nakba, which is the depopulation of the people of Palestine from their country, an event which is unprecedented in 4,000 years of history, of Palestinian history. So I thought, well, I know these people. They support Palestine, justice in Palestine. They participate in demonstrations. They write letters. So I wrote 12 letters to various Jewish people of this caliber in Europe, in America, and Australia, and elsewhere, asking them, now that you read the story of the people of Abu Sitta who owns this land, who lived in it for hundreds of years, would you please ask the kibbutzim in our land very simple questions. Number one, do you know who the people who were there? And do you know who, where are they now? Do you know how you got this land? In what way you got this land? In what way the people of the land are not here? The third question is, you know that they claim their right of return to their matrimony or their ancestral land, which they have been forced to leave, and they are now 2 kilometers away. They can see the lights in the house of the kibbutz, and they say, how come we cannot go back? Very simple questions, very peaceful. Now, out of the 12 or more Jewish parties and persons I send this message to, not one had the courage to do that, except, of course, Eitan. Others asked me, we don't know their addresses. I gave them their addresses. Someone said to me, I know someone who could do that, not me. And then someone said, but can I ask them this question with using another name, not mine? hiding my name. I was amazed at that response, that people who claim to be calling for justice, and they do actually claim for justice in newspapers and demonstrations, they were terrified to tell other Jews who live in Israel that the truth, simple truth. So I thought they were hiding in a bubble of denial, which was pierced by Eitan exhibition in July 2017. So I wrote an article, a long one, and published in Mondo Wise, which is a newspaper in America run by Jews who are truly interested in peace and justice in Palestine. And the title of it, When the Bubble of Denial Burst. You face them with that. And also, in this conversation, we asked someone, his name is Solo. I see that Eitan has met another person who was there in 1948. And this man was present in 1948 in our land, and he knew how it was occupied. And I'll tell you in a moment how it was occupied. And he said, there was nothing here. Nobody was here. It was empty land. And a friend of mine, a British journalist, asked him, and how did you come here? He said, we bought the land. This is, of course, a blatant lie. They did not buy from us 1 single centimeter of land. It was taken by force. So this thought, I leave it with you, that people sometimes who know the truth and they hide behind a blanket of denial, because if they admit it, it is a war crime. If they admit it, then they declare themselves to be war criminals, and they don't want to do that. Now, let me go back to 1948. I was 10. I was in a boarding school, and I came home because the school was closed. And we heard from people that the Jews who settled in coastal Palestine around Jaffa, they came to us from Europe, and they came, some of them in smuggler ships, and they landed in our shores at night. Many of them had even no Palestinian citizenship. Others had during the British Mandate. And I myself, during that time, 1948, I never saw a Jew in my life. I don't know how they look like. Other people said, oh, they look all kinds. Some are blonde, some are dark, some are this. And what do they speak? They speak French, German, Spanish, Hungarian or something. Why are they here? Why did they come to attack us? We have done nothing to them. Well, we don't know that they are attacking villages around Jaffa and Jerusalem. Deir Yassin was very prominent. And I was amazed, and I said to myself a question which I tried to answer all my life. Why did they hate us? Why did they want to kill us? Why did they want to take our land? And still today, I'm trying to answer this question. But on 14th of May, 1948, an old lady, a relative of mine, light sleeper, she woke up at night and she saw lights coming in, a monster with 48 lights. That was 24 armored vehicles. They came to Al-Ma'in and they attacked us. We have about 15 or 20 defenders with old rifles. They kept them at bay for some hours till the morning. And we, women and children, we hid in the ravine in the valley. And we saw, and I saw, the smoke billowing out of our demolished houses and burnt houses. The school which my father built in 1920 was demolished. The water well which we have seen, my father and Abu Ala, grandfather, built in 1933. It was a flour mill, grinding meat to all our harvests, which was plenty. And of course, the well was 95 meters deep, and they blew that up. And this, in the morning, we looked at the black clouds covering all the sky in front of us. And on that day, when we were attacked with this superior force against 15 defenders, I became a refugee in that day. And in that same day, Ben-Gurion sat in Tel Aviv with his council of settlers who came from Europe and declared the state of Israel. I became a refugee before the state of Israel was declared by a few hours. And not only that, in the following years, we heard that the founders of Nerim on our land, which they actually founded the houses in August 1949, almost 1 year after they attacked us, they have committed a horrendous massacre. One of their patrols seized a girl of about 12 years of age, and they killed her brother, and they took the girl hostage. They took her to the present location of Nerim today. And then they decided, a platoon of about 30 people, decided to rape her. They took turn in raping this 12-year-old girl, and then they killed her. And then they buried her in a shallow grave. Some days later, only her hand sticking out of the shallow grave would be seen. It was reported later in Haaretz. But so when we asked, or when these British journalists asked some of the older people in Nerim who were there at the time, what do you know about the mass rape and murder of this young girl? Said, no, this never happened. So the denial is the blanket policy of all those settlers. As I said a moment ago, because the crimes are heinous crimes. Crimes will chase the settler Jews all over geography and history. There is another question. We were about 1,002. Now, Abu Sitta family are about 10,000 people, many of them living in Gaza Strip, but they are living in Jordan, in Lebanon, in many countries in Europe. None of them, especially the young generation who are now 20 or 30, never forget the land of Ma'in, and they never cease to demand the right of return from them. So Ben-Gurion was definitely mistaken. He may turn his grave when he sees that the young did not forget as he predicted, and of course the old will die. But we are very much still alive. We are not talking about mythical story in history over so many years back. We are talking about a live history for 24,000 days and nights when we became refugees. Not one single night we forget that our home is nearby and we are determined to go back to it. So the denial of the crime is one element in maintaining the crime. When those settlers admit that the crime has happened, then there should be reparations, there should be return, there should be all kinds of remedy, as happened, for example, in other cases in the Second World War. That's the only message I can say to you. And I thank my friend Eitan for his courage to do that. And I'm sure he has been subject to vilification and defamation because he's telling the truth. But the truth, my friends, has a long life. It never dies. It may be buried for a little while by the criminals, but it will come out in the rest of the world very soon. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Salman. That was incredibly powerful. And thank you to Eitan as well. And thank you to Gil for all the work you are doing. I think if I would like to say something very quickly because we're running out of time, but first of all, I want to thank you, Salman, for your testimony because so in my case, my grandfather was part of the 1948 Palestinians who were kicked out. He was from Taitaba in the Galilee. And I had the incredible opportunity to go there when I was very young, when I was 10. So I know what it looks like and I remember it. And like you said, we will not forget. But I was never able, my grandfather passed away when I was 9. So I was never able to hear his story from him directly. So I have a very difficult relationship with this because I don't really, I've never technically been there. I've been there once, but I was very young, and yet I know I just feel so close to Palestine. So it's difficult because there's so much I know that I don't know about Palestine, and there's so much more I wish I knew. So this is wonderful. Thank you for that, and I agree. Thank you, Eitan, for confronting people, and thank you, Gil, also for openly talking about this. I think that is what is the most liberating in this project is seeing people who are technically on the other side, and I say technically, and that are able to say things as they are, because this so often lacks, unfortunately. Denial is great. So hopefully this will help relieve that. I think we should go on to the Q&A. So I prepared a few questions for everyone. So maybe I will do one question per guest, just time-wise. What do you think, Gil?
Yeah. And everybody, please do send question in the chat. It will be interesting for us to hear you as well.
Absolutely. Please keep posting and make sure you write questions, because then we will just be able to go through them and it would be too bad if you miss the opportunity to ask a question. So don't worry, you're not interrupting us, just post on the chat, it's absolutely fine. I wanted to ask a question to Salman quickly regarding your plan for the return of the Palestinians. So I know that you've written a lot about this and you've studied the feasibility of it, and that it is absolutely feasible. And this is a theme that Eitan has talked about in the movie, about the option of the people of Al-Ma'in coming back. Now, it's kind of a two-part question, but mostly it's, how feasible do you think that still is today? And would you be happy to go back and live alongside the current inhabitants of the kibbutzim in Al-Ma'in?
Thank you, Ghazaleh. I'll try to be brief to give time for more questions. As I said, I was very curious all my life to know who these people who did this to me and to my people. And so I spent many years, when I was studying for my PhD at University of London, I had a chance to see all the documentation of the British Mandate who created this disaster in the first place. So I collected maps, documents, and all that. Over the years, I created a huge database about Palestine and Palestinians. and I published several atlases. The most well-known of them is Atlas of Palestine, 1917 to 1966. Let me put a little advertisement here. All what I'm going to say is in our website, Palestine Land Society website, which is www.PLands.org. All what I'm going to say is in detail shown on the website. And from that, the first thing, of course, to create Palestine, which was depopulated, 560 towns and villages, depopulated. Most of these villages have been depopulated before Israel was formed. 220 or half all the refugees were depopulated by the Zionist invasion of Palestine before there was something called Israel, before the British left. This fact is very much hidden from everybody. And then we know these people. We have database of millions of Palestinian refugees. We know who they are. We know where they come from. We know their land and their property. We know in which refugee camp they are. We know, of course, they have grown into about 9 times as before. And therefore, I ask myself the question, after we know this, where is their land? Can they go back? We know, of course, from legal point of view, we have tons of resolutions to emphasize and to affirm the right of Palestinian to return. There is nothing in international law, not a single line, which does not support the right of return, not one. Of course, from legal point of view, this is absolutely basic rule, no question. It's even more affirmative than the United Nations Charter, because it's part of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. So that aside, then why we cannot go back? Of course, we know that the Western countries which created Israel in the first place, they do not want to do that. They have an interest because they have very curious situation in the 19th century, early 20th. They want to get rid of the Jews in Europe, but they wanted to plant them in a place where they can be useful for them. So Balfour, who is known for the infamous Balfour Declaration, was an anti-Semite. In 1905, he established a law, an Alien Act, which prevents the European Jews to come to England. He is the same person who wanted to carve the Jews away to Palestine, where they can serve the interests of the British Empire and defend the Suez Canal. Now, coming back to this, we made a study what is the feasibility of the right of return if the international law applies it. We found surprising result, which you can see the details on the website, and that is 87% of Israel's area today is still empty. I should say most of the Jews living in Israel today are living in an area which is slightly larger than the Jewish land during the British Mandate. If you look at land use in the Israel map, according to the Israel study maps, you find that 88% of the land in Israel today is governed by the army. The kibbutz are planted in the village lands in order to prevent their return. For example, all the people in the kibbutzim are 1 to 2% of the Israeli population, and they live in mostly, we have found that 247 village lands have 0 Jews today, and a similar number who have very small number, namely the kibbutz. They keep them in order to prevent the return of refugees. Let me give you an example about Al-Ma'in. Al-Ma'in has 4 kibbutz. The working members in Nirim, which is on my fatherland, has 137 active members. And if you apply the same formula to 4, you get probably 500, 600, 1,000. On return, we are 10,000. And that's why when we made a statistical study of the density of population, we found that in Gaza Strip, where my family, most of them live now, is 7,000 persons per square kilometer. And the settlers in my land, only 1 kilometer away across the barbed wire, their density is 7 persons per square kilometer, 1,000 times less. So if we return and if they wish to live with us, there will be no problem. The question, I must emphasize, it is not a theoretical question. It is a question that the obstacle is neither legal, nor economic, nor geographical, nor even demographic. It is basically Zionism, which is based on the idea to take Palestine without its people.
Yes.
They wanted Palestine to be empty, as the myth says. They don't want Palestine to have its people. So with the presence of the Zionist principle, there can be no peace.
Yes.
As everywhere in the history of the world, only when the evil of this kind of policy is removed, then peace will prevail. And if it does prevail, there is no problem of logistics whatsoever.
Thank you, Salman. Thank you very much. I'm just going to move on quickly now because we're trying to make up for time. Gil, I would like to ask you a little bit about your work. I know that you engage in different artistic practices, notably the public performances versus gallery setting work. And I believe that obviously that follows a little bit with what Salman was saying about, talking about this and breaking the cycle of denial. But I'd like to ask you more directly. So can you explain us a little bit more about the role of these different practices and why you switch in between both?
Yeah, well, with my work, I've been trying to look to any possible platform to present these issues, and sometimes they are not as black and white, and I do like to touch more gray areas, which this is why I presented here just the project of El Ajun with internal refugees that in a way outside, I think, Israel, not many people are aware about the situation of internal refugees and what it does to the Palestinian who are citizens of Israel. But this is a much bigger discussion. In terms of practices, so it's not easy to exhibit work on Palestine and Palestinian issues. So when I started to do this, to engage with these issues, I had to do it on the street, literally. So it was intervention in art festivals, intervention in art even markets. I won't give examples now because it will take too much time. But just one example, which is here, that was when I moved back here, lived in Brixton, the Palestinian Solidarity Campaign doing their stall, giving information every Saturday outside Brixton Station. On one occasion, there is a very big art kind of festival, or not festival, but market, I forgot the name at the moment, but with a lot of store, people basically coming and buying art in Long Street in Brixton. And, it was during 2014, if I remember, Gaza war. And with them, we created a ad hoc project, kind of intervention within this art market. So people, I basically enticed, brought people to the Palestinian Solidarity Campaign stall by making it look as if, or it was as well at the same time, an art stall. So people come for the art, but they learn a bit of the current situation in Palestine. It is complicated discussion of what is more efficient or what can cause a change. I can't answer it. I mean, I consider all of my artwork as socially and politically engaged, whether it's in, and this is one of the works that you can see on the website, dressing with a Ku Klux Klan costume made from my Jewish praying shawl, or bringing people into a gallery, and inviting Palestinian dance group to intervene within the exhibition. So I can't tell what is more effective. What I can say that gallery or museum space does enable more nuances and more subtle discussion in times, usually, rather than what I've been doing through street interventions, for example. And it's feel much more secure because I was attacked or had to defend from the police or run from the police when I've been doing some of the works on the street. So I hope this answers the question.
Yes, thank you very much. And be safe, Gil, when you do these things. But thank you. Finally, Eitan, I'd like to ask you a question that is in continuation with all of this discussion. I think, so this is kind of what we've been talking about since the beginning, that when it comes to the subject of advocating for Palestinian rights, we usually look at Palestinians or Arab experts, and we don't really look at Israeli activists. And as Salman mentioned, and Eitan and Gil is doing himself, and you are doing it, Eitan. But what role do you think Israeli society and Israeli activists currently play, and how should it evolve, in your opinion, if it should?
Yeah, I think, in fact, what Salman's told, it's how he began. It was very moving to hear that when he shared with us that he addressed some 12 people to try to reach to, the settlers on his land, to deliver them his story and his questions. And I mean, I think exactly this should be, our role. And this is what I took on myself since 2001, when I established Zochrot, to bring the history of the Nakba, which is also our history. In fact, the history of Al-Ma'in, of the expulsion of Salman Abu Sitta and his family and his village from his land, it's our history also. I mean, it's not a Palestinian narrative, how the Israelis like to portray it, that it's only their story, tell their stories. No, it's our history. It's not an easy one, of course. It's not easy to face that history. But I can tell you that, one item that I didn't show here, and also Salman didn't see, I took some pieces from his book, from main parts that he tells about his expulsion, what he just mentioned here in very, very briefly today. And I put it in a video in a certain way with the images from his own visit that he shared with me from 1996, I believe. And then I did another video for the exhibit, and it was the first time that the people from the settlers there in Al-Ma'in land, from those kibbutzim, they saw and they encounter the story of how they left, what happened to them. And for them, it was really, as I told you, very, very emotional, very important moment. Some of them rejected it. It was too difficult for them to watch. I have to say, mainly men. It was really gendered, a little bit according to the stereotype that we have, that men were much more rigid and difficult to reach, you know, to be open to that. But many women were reacted very nice to that. And even some of them, as you saw, the woman that I, by accident, by chance, I met her on one of the days, on many days of shooting that I did on the ground of mine. And I just asked her what you think about the right of return, and you saw her answer today. And also many other people that visited the exhibit, they were open to this possibility. And they talked about the possibility of the return of Palestinians to live together. Not all, but some of them. And it's all, by the way, documented in our website. You can see more about the exhibit. I put the link here. And because we put a small box of messages for the refugees, we asked them, instead of writing comments on the exhibit, we asked all the visitors to write a little message to the refugees from Al Ma'in, which we will open it and expose it after the exhibit and pass it to them. So Salman also was exposed to all of them, and he mentioned them in his article, Mondowise. And some of those messages were really moving. So, you know, and from my experience, when we work on these issues, I know it's not easy, and many people react even sometimes with hostility, and even a little bit violence. But many people, more than we think usually, surprisingly, are open to that because they never offered this possibility to talk about it open. And I think it's encouraging, and this is what we are trying to continue doing.
Thank you, Eitan. Yeah, I agree. I am now going to go on to the Q&A part, I think, just because we've gotten to 7:30 UK time. Now, I've written down, there's a couple questions already that came out. Now, this first question is said to be for Eitan, but I believe, Gil, if you have an idea of how to answer that, it would be really interesting to hear your opinion on that as well. So I'm just going to read the question. So thank you for your work. Based on your assessment, are most Israelis above the age of 50 aware of how their state came about or ignorant of it? And furthermore, are they mostly in denial or consciously enjoying their privileged status despite the suffering continuously visited on others and their descendants to bring it about and to maintain it?
So you want me to refer to that?
Yes. If you know.
Yes, look, in fact, it also has to do with our work of Zochrot. When I started Zochrot, I looked, you know, and I typed the word Nakba in Hebrew, and there was almost 0 results. Today, if you would type the term Nakba in Hebrew, you would have tens of thousands of results. It changed dramatically. Also, because of our work and others, of course, we deliver, you know, works from Salman and many other people, Palestinians and others. And also, ironically, with the help of the Israeli government, when they passed the Nakba law in 2011, trying to prevent any commemoration or talking about Nakba in Israel. And it turned to be a rather known issue in Israel. Today, I can say that most of Israelis know something about the Nakba, at least they know the term. They don't, many times they don't know, they think it's only a Nakba day or something like that, but they know something about it, yes, of course. And even for our book that we wrote, I wrote together with my partner, a book about working on the Nakba with Israelis. It's in French and in Hebrew for now. We conducted a research on the right of return of Palestinian refugees and what Israelis think about it. And we found out again, quite surprisingly, that close to 20% of Israelis are open for this possibility of the return of the Palestinians. So yeah, more and more Israelis are knowing about the Nakba, but unfortunately the issue of the right of return on the political or in the media, let's say, on the political of the discussion, is still very, very far from acceptance in Israel, unfortunately.
Thank you. Gil?
Yeah, I don't think I have much. I mean, the Nakba law was basically introducing the history in some way. It's also the law that caused me to lose my job in an art institute in the academia because I just did project with a student which were deemed under this law illegal. But yeah, I think Zochrot was immense in bringing to knowledge, and unfortunately, while I think most of the people now in Israel know and can't deny it, I mean, you go to places and you still see remains. I mean, if you want to see, I mean, when I grew up in Ramat Gan, which is a small, is a town outside Tel Aviv, there is a neighborhood there that is named Salome, which I, as a child, you know, what is Salome? Because it's not in Hebrew. Unfortunately, while most of the people in Israel knows, it doesn't really change much. And I touch the issues of the internal refugees in a way to touch also the feeling of what is to be an Israeli citizens and know that other citizens in that country are suffering with, in a way, from apartheid law that prevent them to have their property. So I know people who live in small, you know, flats in Jaffa, and they have lands in the Galilee, which they are not allowed to, you know, to take back, you know, they could have been, you know, the Palestinian Israeli of citizens are financially in quite grave situation. They shouldn't be like that. A lot of them could have been in much better situation. And what Salman said is very resonant also in the case of Al Ajun. There is a kibbutz that sits on part of the land, but most of the land is still, you know, either fields or a huge forest that was planted there by Kakal, what is in English, Eitan?
Jewish National Fund.
Yeah, the Jewish National Fund, and you still have Jews and non-Jews very recently donating money to plant more trees on the remains of these villages. So,
thank you. So I saw there was another question that you answered, Gil, on the chat. Concerning institutions, Israeli institutions. Is this a question that we should look at? Or as in to what extent do the Israeli institutions that apparently store belongings that were owned by 48 Palestinians, so to what extent does this reinforce or challenge the denial that exists? So it's the idea that there are Israeli institutions holding belongings by 48 Palestinian refugees. Do you guys or Salman know anything about this? Or?
I mean, the Jewish agency and the army and the state do hold. I don't know how much universities for academic institute, but I don't really know about it.
Mm.
Salman?
Can I answer that now?
Yes.
Yes, you are asking a very important question. The area of Palestine is 26,000 kilometers. Israel in 1948 occupied 20,500 kilometers. Now, of course, it's taken more than that. When the British left during 30 years of British collusion to bring Jews into Palestine, they managed to record in British registers 6% of Palestine as Jewish-owned land. Now, that leaves 94% of the land in which Israel sits today to be a Palestinian property. There is no question about that. There is no disagreement about that in international law. Now, the question then, what did the Israeli government, which established on this land, do with this land? What did they do? They had a big fight between two groups. One called Jewish National Fund, which said every land in the world belongs to the Jewish people all over the world, and we are entitled to take that land. The new state of Israel, Ben Gurion, said, yes, but our soldiers, the Haganah, did so much wars and killing and this and that, and they are entitled to hold this land. So this quarrel went along for 10 years between these two. They finally, in 1960, they arrived to an agreement that both will share the control of this land, the Jewish National Fund and the State of Israel. And they formed something new called Israel Land Administration, ILA. ILA is entrusted to control and manage the lands of Palestinians. And they are doing this today. But let me remind you, not one single Israeli today, with very few exceptions, have a title deed to the land he is using. Nareem, in my land, the settlers there rent our land from Israel Land Administration for 49 years. They made it into 19 years, rent. So no Israeli person hold a title deed, with a few exceptions, to the land he's taken over of a Palestinian land. And therefore, from legally point of view, all our land is very well documented. Moreover, the United Nations confirmed that. In 1964, they made a complete inventory of the ownership of Palestinian land. I have, so the United Nations does, a record of 453,000, 500,000 landowners, the name of the person, what he owns, and where, and so on. So the United Nations went one step further. Not only it documented the land of Palestinians, but demanded from Israel and all the member states of the United Nations to register the income and the revenue they derived from the refugee Palestinian land income. They have to record how much they derive from it, entry, and so on. Every year in November, the United Nations have a resolution called Refugee Revenue, revenue from refugee land. Of course, Israel, with the help of the United States, doesn't take notice of that. But let me assure everyone, we have documentation to know the origin and the state and the development of every single piece of land from 1948, more than any other case, more than Bosnia, more than Iraq, more than any other place. So we have all the mechanism. The people are there, the data is there, the land is there. What we need is the will to break the monopoly of the United States, alliance of Israel and the United States. That's the only thing needed.
Thank you, Salman. Thank you very much. I believe that we are going to end at this time because we've gone over a little bit. There was one last question from Dora, but I'm just going to mention that Salman has actually answered that question earlier on about the feasibility of the return. So we actually discussed that earlier. And the response is yes, absolutely. It is not a threat in terms of geography and demographics, but obviously is more a matter of personal issues. So I hope this answers Dora's question. I think this is a great place to end. What do you think, Gil? You're muted. I can't hear you. Sorry. Gil, we cannot hear you.
Yeah, sorry.
Sorry.
Yeah, unless there are any other urgent question, we hope to continue this discussion when the exhibition will be at P21. I must just thank Ichye to hosting this exhibition and taking the risk by doing so. It was more than 2 years, I think, of discussion. And then we got the corona. I did had ideas that it's a Zionist kind of conspiracy to stop me exhibiting, but my ego is not as big. So yeah, but it was a big disappointment. But a lot of the work is online, and it will happen hopefully toward the I think it was 17th of September.
I think it's 24th of September to 17th of October.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah,
and I hope we could host again Eitan and Salman and you in one of the events of the exhibition.
Yeah, I'll be happy to. I hope Salman too.
Yeah.
That would be lovely. I would really love that.
Thank you all. Thank you, Gil, for the structure you created, and big thank you for my old, in terms of years, not of age, of Eitan, my old friend Eitan, and thank you, Ghazaleh, of course, Ghazaleh, of course, and please don't forget to send us the link, because I get messages now. We want to see it from the beginning, so we need the link.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Ichye, do you want to say something?
No, thank you very much, Gil. It's not a risk from my side. It's my duty to have this show in the gallery. It's important that people see this work. And I'm looking forward to work with you on this exhibition. Hopefully it will be in a good time after the end of the lockdown and people start relaxing a bit and moving around. But anyway, we'll try also to make sure that everything will be online.
Thank you.
And thank you, Yahya. I forgot to say that because I didn't see you on the screen. Now I see you. Thank you very much. P21 is our home in London. We always use it for our events.
Thank you, Dr. Abu Sitta.
Yes, everyone, please go and check out P21. Has it reopened yet, Yahya?
We are hoping to have something during end of July.
Okay.
So, but we want to just check the guidelines before we make it available to the public.
Okay, well, everyone just check out their website, P21 Gallery in London. And we will definitely, as Gil said, be sending an email around with all the links and a link to the recording, so you can make sure to catch everything we have said if you needed to leave before. And thank you so much to all our participants. This was really, really lovely. Thank you, Yahya. Thank you, Gil. Thank you, Eitan. Thank you, Salman.
Thanks.
Thanks, everybody. Thanks a lot.
Take care.